Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another episode of CSGO Newsroom with KRiPz. Oh boy, this was such an amazing week. So I was up till 1 a.m. last night watching the grand final between Navi and Big Clan at the ESL One Cologne tournament. And the best thing about this is my dear friend Sadat Nair, he was in Cologne himself. He was at the Lancers Arena enjoying this event, covering it from there. And AFK Gaming was able to bring you the best content related to this tournament. Also, I would like to tell you that we have made contact with some very reputed players in the scene, and obviously based on those players, we might be having some interviews and podcasts with them. So there is a lot of good content coming your way, so you should stay tuned, and we will give you the best coverage of this tournament as soon as possible. But for now, let's just jump into the fray. Obviously, it was Navi that walked away with the trophy, and I'm really happy for them because these guys, they hadn't won a major event in a very long time. I mean, they had been building up. They won the CSGO Asia Championship a few weeks ago, and here they are at the ESL One Cologne. Even if this was not a major tournament, people do consider it as big as a major. It is one of the biggest tournaments of the year. So that's a really cool thing that Navi were able to secure a win over here. And the most interesting thing about this tournament is when the playoffs actually began, I thought that this was going to be yet another FaZe versus Astralis grand final. I mean, let's be honest, these two teams have been making it to the grand finals so very often right now that we're just used to seeing them all the time. And if that would have happened, there would be a very interesting development because Intel Grand Slam then comes into the picture. What is the Intel Grand Slam, you guys might be asking? So basically, it's a race. Whichever teams win 4 major events in a row. Not in a row. I mean, whichever teams gets to 4 event victories first before anybody else, they will win $1 million. Now, FaZe, they had been building up quite a lot of wins under their belt. So if FaZe won this tournament, they would have also won the Intel Grand Slam, which would have made them $1 million richer. However, if Astralis won this tournament, they would have denied FaZe this win, and because of that, they would have simply gotten extra cash only because of the fact that they were able to deny FaZe the Intel Grand Slam victory. But this came out of nowhere. I mean, none of those teams made it into the finals. In fact, it was Navi and Big Clan. Big Clan, man, they have been doing so much cool work. I'm gonna point out some of the major differences that I saw, which I think was the reason behind Big's victory. Not victory, but yeah, they had a phenomenal performance. And obviously the MVP of this tournament, in my opinion, was Simple. However, in the last map of the grand finals, Electronic really stepped up. And even he just woke up and he was rivaling Simple with the amount of firepower, the amount of punishment he was giving to Big. That was just commendable. Zeus, my man, that guy, he is an excellent in-game leader. He was able to read Astralis and Big like an open book. He had clearly done his homework, and Navi, they were not playing like the typical Navi that you're used to seeing. I mean, the typical Navi, obviously, they play a little passive. They not like to take too much map control. They push slowly. They try to get picks. That's the obvious point. They try to get picks, but then they are very passive about it. This time, Navi took the same approach, but then they were super aggressive. They were playing this hybrid playstyle that I have never seen Navi play before. On train, Simple was rushing the lower ramp so often, and the pop-up control was always in favor of Navi. So that was something. I mean, I haven't seen Navi play that way in a really, really long time. So I was just really happy to see that. Aside from that, Big. Now, I'm going to point out a statistic which I think is very important. So Big had an average utility damage of 33 in every round. And that number goes up to 48.5 on Inferno. Now, that tells a story, doesn't it? If Big are able to do 48.5 damage consistently every round using only the utility grenades, they haven't even made contact with the players. All they're doing is nading them down, throwing Molotovs on them, and trying to do as much damage without even making contact. Now, that paints an excellent story. I will probably do a podcast or a how to be a better teammate episode using, about the proper usage of nades and other utility grenades based on the performance of Big in this tournament. Usually it's Astralis that is able to pull off such massive numbers of damage using only the utility grenades. But then it seems like Big, they have learned the tricks of the trade and they use the same thing against the other teams. In spite of this amazing statistic, Navi were able to win because they were playing in this hybrid way. They were anticipating the nade stacks from Big Clan, and not just anticipating nade stacks, they were anticipating each and every move that they were able to make. Every time that Navi was in an eco round, they decided to stack one particular side, and guess what? Their opponents decided to go towards the exact same side that they had stacked, walking into a trap each and every time. I don't even remember how many anti-ecos Navi was supposed to lose, but they have won. So many times they have denied their opponents the opportunity of winning an anti-eco, and that that was such an amazing thing that they were able to reset the opponent's economy so many times and walk away with unprecedented leads. And that's exactly what led Navi win. It's basically like if the team is playing in their own stadium and the crowd cheers for them, they will have some sort of an advantage. I used to believe that this applies only to football, basketball, and other like real sports. But then I have noticed it might just apply to electronic sports as well. I mean, look at this. Big Plan. They are a German team. This tournament was happening in Germany, and they were able to get to the finals. Now, as a team, Big Clan was formed only a few months ago, so that means they should not be anywhere to the top team in the world as of this point. But yet, here they are in this tournament. So, I mean, obviously, as of now, these are only the few tournaments that I have noticed that where this home ground advantage might have worked in the favor of one particular team. Obviously, we try to watch some more and determine whether or not there exists a correlation or a causality between the two. But that's it about ESL One Cologne. Let's move on to the other interesting things that are happening closer to home in Asia. What I want to talk about is the Thai powerhouses. I'm gonna bring up a diagram over here. So this are the teams that have been currently qualified for the DreamHack Stockholm Asian Closed Qualifier. I want you to notice something over here. Gosu is from East Asia. Now, in the East Asia Open qualifiers, the most interesting thing happened. MVP PK from Korea, they were the strongest team, and obviously, since they are the number 2 team in Asia, at least in my opinion, I expected them to qualify from the East Asia Open qualifiers. But guess what? They lost to the Japanese team Scars Absolute. And who avenged them? Gosu. And even Gosu is from South Korea. So you see, the best team in Korea did not qualify, but Gosu did. At least there's one Korean team that came through from the Asian qualifier. Another thing that I would like to point out. So you can see all these teams right here. Look at the teams that have qualified from the Southeast Asia and South Asian qualifiers. Beyond and Signature, both of them are teams from Thailand. Now, in the South Asian Open qualifiers, since there were 2 teams that were supposed to qualify, the semi-final matches determine which teams would go forward. And in the semi-finals, there were 3 teams from Thailand over there. We had Beyond, we had Signature, and we had Alpha Red. That also paints another story, doesn't it? A few months ago, Lucid Dream was able to beat Boot Dreamscape and MVP PK. Lucid Dream, they were not anywhere close to the top 10. They were not anywhere close to the top 10 teams in Asia, yet they were able to beat the best teams in Asia in the IEM Shanghai qualifiers. That's a different story. They didn't qualify. Boot Dreamscape was able to avenge them in the finals, but then they did beat Boot Dreamscape, and they knocked them down into the lower bracket. And that was Lucid Dream, again from Thailand. I'm starting to notice a pattern over here. It wasn't just Boot Dream. It wasn't just Lucid Dream that was able to come up on top. It wasn't just one Thai team. 3 Thai teams in the open qualifier semi-finale. And that means each and every damn team from Thailand is starting to rise up to the top. In this is the closed qualifier for the DreamHack Stockholm, and there are already 2 teams from Thailand waiting them over here. And I just can't help but notice the similarity and the correlation between Gosu qualifying from South Korea and all these Thailand teams coming up in the top 10 teams. There's obviously some sort of knowledge transfer. These teams, they are helping each other out. Usually what happens in a lot of countries, at least say Singapore, say Malaysia, even India for that matter, there are only 1 or 2 top teams. They keep on fighting between themselves. There is never like one true king. There's just 2 teams who are fighting to be on the top, and they don't help each other out because they are rivals. But this is what's happening in Thailand. We don't see one particular team rising. If there was just one particular team, I wouldn't even be touching upon this topic. It's every damn team from Thailand which is rising up to the top. Obviously, that means they are helping each other out. There is some sort of knowledge transfer happening in between the teams. And that same thing happened in Korea as well. Why do you think Gosu was able to qualify when MVP PK was not able to do so? Obviously, MVP PK, they learned from their mistakes against their loss of Scars Absolute. They helped Gosu qualify. They helped Gosu prepare themselves for the match against Scars Absolute in the finals. So that sort of knowledge transfer, that sort of understanding each other in the ecosystem within teams helping each other from the same country, that really needs to happen. And that is not how one particular team will rise to the top. That's how one particular nation in the subcontinent, not the subcontinent, in the entire continent will rise to the top. And honestly, that is something I would really like to see from the Indian teams as well. Help each other out. And that's the way to rise to the top. That's what I wanted to point out from this topic of Thai CSGO revolution. Let's move on to the next topic. The very interesting one which I want to cover is the rise of a new powerhouse in Indonesia. RRQ. They are a team which have multiple rosters. They have a Dota 2 roster, they have a League of Legends roster, they have Arena of Valor, Mobile Legends, and they even have a Piercing Blue roster. Piercing Blue is another FPS game. It's obviously not as popular as Counter-Strike, but then in some of the Southeast Asian countries, it is pretty damn popular. Now, this team, they announced that they are venturing into CSGO as well, and they have picked up a new roster. Boy, this roster, in my opinion, looks lit. Let's take a look at the first 2 people. That's gonna be Dispenser and Dubstep. Now, both of these players are from the Philippines. At one point, they both used to play in the same team, Mineski. Earlier in this February 2018, Dubstep, he left and he joined Archangel. Obviously, that was another Filipino team and they couldn't, really make it work. But then, now both of these players, they have been reunited once again in the same team. So I am excited to see both of them in play. And I'm pretty sure that these guys will be able to upset a lot of big teams now that they are back together. They used to be the explosive duo. They were like the Forrest and Get Right of Philippines. That's what I would compare them to. Forrest and Get Right, they are one of the most iconic duos of Counter-Strike. Obviously the best friend, not just in the teams, but also in real life. And obviously, I think these 2 guys, Dubstep and Dispenser, they're like the dynamic duo of Philippines. The most important player in the team, however, I would like to point out is Machine Gun. Now, this guy, he started out as professional CSGO career from Mongolia. Obviously, the Mongols at one point were a very fierce team. They might not be on the tippy top anymore, but they are definitely in the top 10 in Asia. And since this guy, he has experience of a Mongolian playstyle, he is naturally a very dominant player. He has very good aim. And every time he joins the server, he just dominates. But this is not just the Mongolian firepower that makes Machine Gun such a devastating player. At one point, Machine Gun used to play for Splice. That's a North American team. Now, this guy, he goes to North America. He learns the playstyle of American teams, which are generally considered to be superior than Asian teams. I mean, it's obviously all the Asian teams are always the underdogs whenever they go for an international tournament. NA and Europe teams, they are supposed to be the tippy top guys, but Asians are always the underdogs. Now that Machine Gun has experience of an American team, he will be able to do some sort of knowledge transfer when he brings that experience back to Asia. Now, Machine Gun, even though he started out in Mongols, he went to Splice only for a couple of months. And now he was back to Eclipse, another Chinese team. So you see what's happening over here. It's not just one playstyle that he's focused on. He has experience from all around the world. He knows what the Americans like to think. He knows how the Chinese like to think. He also knows his own Mongolian roots. And that much experience on one player is just superb. All right. I mean, to have someone like that in your team, bringing in all that experience from all these different countries, it's like a library of knowledge. And that is just something, I mean, that makes Machine Gun not just a devastating player, but also a very good teacher to have in your team. The other two players in this team are Lux and Mirsky. Now, these two players, you probably might not have ever heard of them before, but then these guys, they have been turning a lot of heads in the Indonesian local scene. They used to be stand-ins for teams like Reka and NXL, so obviously they are very good. They are being coached by Next Wins, and Next Wins, I mean, he used to be an old school player for XCN, Team Executioner, back in the 1.6 glory days, and he is going to be coaching them. The interesting thing is he is already tied up with the RRQ Piercing Blue roster. So now that he will be coaching the Piercing Blue roster as well as the CSGO roster, he's going to have a lot on his hands, but then all that experience will definitely help RRQ rise to the top. And I think, I mean, at least on paper, this seems to be like a top 10 team, if not top 10, at least a top 20. They will obviously make it to some close qualifiers, and I'm really excited to see this team in play. They were formed just a week ago, so it will obviously take some time for them to, make themselves known in the scene, but I can't wait for that day to come. The last topic of the day today is going to be JYP. Now, unfortunately, this is a team from Malaysia which has decided to disband. I mean, they did not really have too many good performances, and that's why obviously this happened. Now, I'm going to talk about what is actually going on in JYP. So now, these teams, I mean, these players, the captain was BW. Now, since the team has disbanded, this guy, he is standing in for another local team called Resurgence while he awaits his deployment in the Singapore National Service. He's from Singapore, and Singapore, they have this rule that everybody has to do some sort of a military service for a certain amount of years. I'm not really sure about the Singaporean laws, but then he is going to take a break from CSGO pretty soon when he gets enrolled into the Singapore National Service. Until then, he is going to be standing in for Resurgence. The other person, Snapty from Australia and Sovereign, they have both decided at this point to take a break from competitive CSGO. Hopefully, they will come back in the future. I would love to see these guys return. They are really cool players. But the most interesting thing is between PZ Kid and Xavier. Now, if you guys did not know until now, these guys used to be brothers. Aaron Pereira and Alex Pereira, PZ Kid and Xavier, they are brothers. And they both will be continuing their professional CSGO careers in the Australian scene. PZ Kid has already been picked up by the Australian team's Corvidae, and Xavier, he will also be picked. Yeah, that's everything that's been happening in the CSGO scene in the last couple of weeks. ESL One Cologne, obviously the highlight of the stream today, but a lot of new teams, a lot of new rosters are coming up in CS Asian scene as well. Since the JYP one powerhouse has been disbanded, another one forms up in Indonesia, and obviously since the teams are helping each other out, the Koreans, they are having knowledge transfer. The Thailand teams, all of them, not just one of them, all of them are coming up on top. And I'm really excited to see if the current top teams in Asia will manage to stay at the top in the course of the next 1 month. Obviously, in the next 1 month, we will have another major tournament coming up. That is going to be the Face It Majors. The Asia is starting really soon. I think it's starting next week. So hopefully we'll get to see some action over there as well. And yep, that's going to be it from my side today. This is KRiPz tuning out. And do keep your eyes peeled for our channel. We have some pretty amazing content about the ESL One Cologne tournament, which will be coming out very soon. Since Sina, our representative, was over there, he was covering this tournament. Man, I'm jealous of this guy. He's living the dream right there. So, yep, that's going to happen. Also, I pointed out about Big's need and utility usage. Probably I will do another podcast about the same. I will do an episode of how to be a better teammate, focused specifically on using that utility. So, yeah, thanks for tuning in. And this is KRiPz tuning out for the day.